and welcome to the C-Suite Edge. I'm your host, John Light. I'm also the CEO and founder of Sabretooth Recruiting, and today I'm talking to Ray DeWitt, who's the 1031 DST guy. And Ray, I'm happy to have you on, and I'm going to say, when you say, hey, I'm glad to be here, or whatever it is, tell everybody what DST is, because I scratched my head for a heartbeat when we first started talking.
Yeah, DST is short for Delaware Statutory Trust. It's a special way to invest in real estate. It's created under the laws of the state of Delaware, hence the name Delaware Statutory Trust, but it is the only truly passive investment that you can do, real estate investment that you can do, that the IRS is allowed for the tax code of the 1031 exchange.
Nifty. Okay. Well, I'm interested in knowing, because I know a little bit about your background, not much. You know, I got exposed to 1031 from an accounting perspective when I was in college. And so we're going way back in the time machine here to say college. So when I see 1031, I recognize it, but I don't know all the nuance. Tell us a little bit, give us a 90-second rundown on how you got into this business and where you came from.
Yeah, I got into financial services back in the late 90s and did that for a long time, worked for a few different firms and was, pretty successful. Over a decade ago, I just got really burnt out on what I was doing, and I felt like, the investment firm, the investment company tended to win, and they didn't care if the client won or not. The client kind of was last on the food chain to make money. It's just how it felt. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I felt, and kind of looking for something to do, but still keeping my practice because it provided a good lifestyle, and I knew I helped people still, but I discovered that most of my clients that actually had money, that were successful, owned real estate or their own business, and they had tax problems. And I happened to have a guy show up from one of these DST companies in my office one day with coffee and donuts and start talking to me about 1031 exchanges and DSTs, and I said, what the heck's a 1031 exchange? Thought the product was interesting, but didn't think anything of it. 2 nights later, I went to a cocktail party, met a guy who had said he had sold 60 rental properties over the last 2 years and paid all these taxes and wished there was some way he could have 1031 exchange into just like some type of real estate investment trust, some type of passive program. Because he didn't want to be a landlord anymore. And my head just went, boom, exploded. I was like, I just learned about something. I think I found what I'm going to do. And here I am. So.
No kidding. Well, tell us, since we're talking about here we are and this kind of journey, tell us a little bit about, if you can, describe what's the biggest problem that you solve for people? Because this is not, when you talk real estate investment and taxes and the future, a lot of people look at it and their eyes glaze over. So what's the biggest problem you solve, and how would you define that, and how would it be helpful for folks?
The biggest problem I solve is, I like to say, pay yourself, not the IRS. It's infinite returns, because you're not losing money to the Treasury, you're keeping it working for you, because we have ways you can invest money within the tax code and get tax deductions, tax deferrals. The 1031 exchange is a very, very powerful tool for that. I do solve other tax problems for people if they're just looking to invest money and get different tax breaks, tax deductions, maybe offset capital gains from a stock or crypto sale. So at the end of the day, the problem I solve is helping people reduce their taxes, keep more of what you earn, and at the same time providing you a better lifestyle, because we're doing this as a passive investment. And I like to say, with a lot of people in the DSTs, a lot of real estate brokers may be familiar with this term of the terrible T's, the toilets, the tenants, and the trash. I like to say, let me turn them into the good teas, the travel, the tequila, and the tea times. And, defer your taxes, reduce your taxes, something passive so you're not dealing with all those headaches and you're out golfing, traveling, doing whatever it is you want to do while getting income and keeping more money in your pocket.
Interesting. And I know this is kind of an odd question, maybe it's not, but who are your clients? I mean, when you hear, like you mentioned the example of the guy who sold 60 rental properties in 2 years. The vast majority of Americans aren't toting around one rental property. Maybe they have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but the vast majority don't have 60, even if they're an investor. So who are you most likely to be able to help when it comes to 1031s?
I mean, obviously, a lot of my clients in the DST space tend to be a little older. I am getting more and more clients from their 40s and 50s, but a lot of my clients are baby boomers. They're getting to the age where they're retiring. Not only have they retired from work, but now they're retired from managing real estate. And that's really quite common. People come to me often like, I'm going to sell this rental property or office building I own because I don't want to manage it anymore. And I'm solving that problem for them of getting rid of the headache and deferring their taxes and keeping more money in their pocket. But I also help people who in a 1031 exchange, where people who don't know maybe on the show what a 1031 exchange is. That's the IRS tax code where if you sell investment property and if you transfer the money to another investment property, you do not have to pay capital gains tax. You can defer it. Right. The IRS only gives you 45 days to identify what you're going to purchase after you sell. So oftentimes, especially in a market like right now, people are really struggling to find good deals on property or they can't find something. So they come to me as kind of a backup option. And other times people will do an exchange and maybe they've got a few $100,000 left over after they've made their new purchase. And they don't know where to put it. It's kind of hard to invest $200,000, $300,000 into real estate, unfortunately. Well, the Delaware statutory has got $100,000 or so minimum, so it's really easy for people to defer all of the money, and so these are great options for people. I also work with people who high income earners, even if it's high passive income. Maybe if you're a doctor or a lawyer and you work for a firm and your W-2 income, you get absolutely crushed on taxes. There's not benefits that you can take. I show people how to invest that money and get deductions. Someone can invest $100,000, let's say, and get anywhere from an $80,000 to $200,000 tax deduction.
No kidding. Yikes. Yeah. Wow. So some of the people listening probably need to pick up the phone and call you. So let me ask you this. I mean, I know you're out west, up in the mountainous region of wherever it is in Utah, right? So where's your footprint? I mean, do you work coast to coast with clients? Do you find jurisdictional issues from state to state?
I have clients in 35 states.
Okay.
I would say, obviously, being in Utah, probably half my clients are in Utah simply because I'm here locally and, this is where I get around every day. But my second most amount of clients has got to be Florida and then Texas, California. I have a lot of clients, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York. In a lot of different states, I have clients. So I'm all over the country. I travel all the time. I speak at different events. I'm all over. It doesn't matter where you're at. As long as you're in the 50 United States, Puerto Rico and Guam don't qualify for the 1031 exemptions, but the 50 states do.
Yeah. I said, why not Guam? It's in the middle of the Pacific somewhere, right? So...
I'm sorry.
I said, why not Guam? It's in the middle of the Pacific. I mean, that'd be some place to travel for a seminar on 1031, wouldn't it?
Unfortunately, these tax benefits don't extend to the U.S. territories. I don't know. Yeah. So I don't make the rules.
Yeah, Congress and the IRS have some peculiarities out there, I think, driven by who knows what back when. I'm curious to know, when you talk to people and you talk about 1031s, what's the reception like? I mean, from my perspective, having been exposed to them in a very general sense back in college when I was getting my accounting degree, and you see how this stuff worked, because you had to know it for the CPA exam or be familiar with it. It's been a long time. I've gotten really rusty since then. I don't practice accounting for a couple decades plus now, but I'm just curious, how's it received? How do people take this? Like the fellow you were talking about who sold the 60 properties, I'm just hearkening back to that because here's a guy who did that. Who knows how much money he left on the table? And if you had that many properties, you kind of wonder who's advising and the level of sophistication. And where I'm going with that is people get today, it feels like people are more and more peculiar about their sources of information, and they seem more trusting towards what they find on the web versus what they find talking to a person. So I'm curious, what kind of reception do you typically see when you start talking about 1031s to people who maybe have not been exposed to them before?
I get a great reception of it, and it's really unfortunate that the education standards in the real estate industry needs to improve. I talked to a lot of people like, oh, where were you 2 months ago? My real estate agent never even told me about this 1031 exchange thing. Or their CPAs tend to just be tax preparers. It's really important that you work with professionals who know the more advanced details of the tax laws and different stuff like that. And I'm really kind of surprised at how many people don't know what a 1031 exchange is. I mean, it's literally like 1 out of 3 investment real estate transactions are done in a 1031 exchange. It's a massive, massive market.
Wow, that many. 1 out of 3.
Yeah, so basically 1 in 4 residential and something like 1 in 3 or 2 in 5, something like that. Commercial transactions are 1031 exchanges. There's trillions of dollars of real estate in this country, and believe it or not, over 40% of it is actually owned by individuals, baby boomers. So there's a huge market for this, and it's starting to get known. The DSTs, some of the bigger wirehouses are starting to take notice and try to offer them to their clients. I don't think they do as good as a job as somebody like myself in the independent space does for a number of reasons I won't get into, but people tend to have a good reception. They don't know about it. And like the guy I mentioned at the cocktail party, he knew what a 1031 exchange was, but the problem was one headache for another headache. He didn't know there's a passive option he could have gone into. And so that's my mission, is to educate people, say, hey, there's these passive options you can do, and it's all very high quality institutional grade real estate.
So are you talking syndication?
It's what?
Are you talking syndication when you talk about the passive?
Yeah, they are. It's a DST is a type of syndication. But it's different than what most people are familiar with when they think of syndications. Interesting.
Out of curiosity, and I say this, you talk about traveling around and you're going to seminars and delivering presentations and this sort of thing. Is there one that you attend on an annual basis, like some major event that's a regular, or is it just more idiosyncratic and they fall into place when they happen?
There's industry-specific ones. The Federation of Exchange Accommodators is a great organization, and it's a organization for the people who are 1031 exchange accommodators or qualified intermediaries, as they're known. I'm going to miss it this year, but I typically will attend 1 or 2 of their conferences every year. But your average investor is not going to that. Those are industry professionals that are going to that. No, I've just done a lot of different things over the years, and if I do an event for a couple of years, and I may not do it again if I don't like the results or the type of people there. I guess I've recently become a member of the Hero Club and C-Suite, been attending those events. That's been a great organization. So
interesting. Well, let me ask you this: if somebody wants to learn more, not just 1031s, but this passive option via the DSTs, what's the best way for folks to find you and get in touch for a conversation?
You're welcome to call me, email me, or go to my website, and they can get a lot of information on the website, and even contact me or my team through the website.
And that's 1031dstgroup.com, right?
.com, yeah. And email is ray@1031dstgroup.com. So,
man, wow, that's really out there. I never would have guessed it.
yeah. Kept it simple. Or like I said, my cell phone, I'm happy to mention the cell phone, 801-815-6619. I'll pick it up, I'll answer. If I think your call's spam, as it seems so much anymore, leave a message, and I will call you back, believe it or not, pretty quick.
Huh? No, I think that's awesome. I appreciate your accessibility, because I've got no doubt in my mind, there's, like I said, I'm familiar with 1031s from an educational perspective years ago. But when I saw DST, I think one of the first questions I asked when you and I first started conversing was, what? What are we talking about here? And so it's pretty self-explanatory. It's Delaware State Trust, but what's not self-explanatory are the options that are in there and how you can not evade, but just plan for and defer taxes, let you keep more of your money working, and therefore drive your investments better. So I think it's brilliant. Ray, thanks so much for joining me today on the C-Suite Edge.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, John.